Let's take a few minutes and talk about an extremely important topic, data visualization best practices. Now, data viz is equal parts art and science. And before you start just dumping data onto a canvas or choosing whatever chart looks pretty or happens to fill the page, you need to step back and ask yourself these three key questions. Number one, what type of data am I working with? Is it geospatial? Is it time series? Are there hierarchies? Is it financial? And so on. Number two, what exactly am I trying to communicate? Right? Is it a comparison across categories? Am I trying to show a composition, a relationship, a distribution? And third, who is my audience, right? Who's the end user and what exactly do they need? Am I presenting to or designing for a fellow analyst, for a manager, for an executive, or even for the general public? That end user will really dictate how my visuals are designed and developed. So let's go ahead and unpack each of these questions in a bit more depth, starting with question one. What type of data are you working with? Now, data comes in all shapes and sizes. It can fall in all sorts of categories. And some of the things you're looking for are things like, do I have time series data, right? Is there a date field that lets me show trends or patterns over time? Do I have geospatial fields that let me draw comparisons between geographic regions or locations using things like maps? Are there interesting categorical fields that I can use for filtering or segmenting the data in my reports? Again, do I have hierarchies that I can drill up or down into as part of my analysis? And then there's some less common categories as well. You might have financial specific data. You might have text data that's a little bit less visual or numeric. You may have funnel stages represented in your data set, or even things like survey responses. And again, there are many, many more examples of the types of data that you might encounter, but the bottom line here is that the type of data that you're working with will often determine which type of visual will best represent it. For example, using maps to represent geospatial data, using line charts for time series data, bar or column charts for categorical comparisons, tree maps for hierarchical data, and so on and so forth. Question two is all about what you're trying to communicate. So let's break this down into four different categories here. It could be a comparison, a composition, a distribution, or a relationship. Now, a comparison is when you're trying to compare values either over time or across different categories. And the common visuals that you'll use to communicate comparisons are things like basic column and bar charts, clustered columns, data tables or heat maps. If you're using time series data, line charts or area charts, and then sometimes more specialized visuals like radar charts can be helpful here as well. Composition is all about breaking down the component parts of a whole. This is where you'll typically use visuals like stacked bar or column charts, pies or donut charts, stacked areas to show both composition and trending over time, or possibly some more specialized visuals like waterfalls, funnels, tree maps, or sunbursts. Distribution is about showing the frequency of values within a series, and histograms are really far and away the most common and popular type of visual to show distributions. If you've ever seen a bell curve or normal distribution, that's a histogram at work. You might use things like density plots or box and whisker charts here as well. And last but not least, we have relationships, which are about showing correlation between multiple variables. Scatter plots and bubble charts are far and away the most common visuals in this category. Could also potentially use data tables, heat maps, or a correlation matrix as well. So this can be a handy guide to help point you towards the right visuals to choose based on what you're trying to communicate. And I know this is a quick review. I know this can feel a little bit overwhelming talking about all of these different chart types. How could you possibly know which one to choose for any given situation? So the big takeaway here, the bottom line, is to keep it simple. There are hundreds of charts, if not thousands of charts to choose from, but at the end of the day, your basic tried and true options like bar charts, column charts, line charts, histograms, scatter plots, those are going to be a great fit in 90% of use cases. And the reason they're tried and true is because they often do the best job telling the simplest and clearest story, which ultimately is the goal of data visualization. And that brings us to question three. Who is the end user and what do they need? So let's simplify things a bit and imagine that there are three potential audiences. You've got the analyst, the manager, and the executive. Obviously, there are different variations of end users and audiences that exist out there, but this will help us start to understand how to tailor an analysis or visualization based on who's consuming it. So, when you're designing for someone at the analyst level, typically these are people who like to see details. They want to understand what's happening at a granular level. They're analytically minded, so they might want to see things like tables or combo charts, a bit more complex, maybe a little bit more data heavy. And again, they'll want access to some granular detail to support root cause analysis. On the other hand, a manager level audience might want more summarized data with a focus on clear and actionable insights to help them operate the business. So in that case, it typically makes sense to skew towards more common or basic charts and graphs, some detail, but really only when it supports a specific insight or recommendation. And then finally, at the top of the food chain, you've got the executive audience. These are people who are super busy. Typically, they just want high-level, crystal clear KPIs that they can use to track business health and top-line performance at a glance. So this is where visuals like KPI cards or very simple charts often make the most sense. You want to keep the detail to a minimum unless it adds critical context to those KPIs. So again, takeaway here is that how you visualize and present your data is largely a function of who will be consuming it, right? So that fellow analyst might want the granular details, managers and executives might prefer top-line KPIs, and again, that focus on clear data-driven insights. So there you have it. That's our crash course in the 3 key questions for data visualization. Next up, we're going to talk about our step-by-step dashboard design framework, and then we're actually going to put pencil to paper and start sketching out the layout for our AdventureWorks report. Stay tuned.